All right, I've started to record on our cloud, which is where we usually record it. So seems like it's working.
Cool.
Thanks, Emily. I've got 9:01. Ndidi, are you ready for us to open the floodgates?
Yes, ma'am. Jessica, you ready?
Do it.
Awesome.
All right. Good show, everyone. I'm excited to hear everything.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to April's Phi Club session. Some of you are new here. For those who have been with us before, you know how this goes. I already see you in the chat, but please continue to use the chat to introduce yourselves and your organizations. If you are hiring or have open funding opportunities or any upcoming events, please also feel free to share that in the chat as we go along this morning. We are so excited to bring you this April session of the Phi Club. This session's topic is on corporate dollars for good. And as you may have seen in some of the marketing, we wanted to cover, before we even knew what would be happening in today's and supporting one another. So thank you for that. And Ndidi, I'll turn it to you.
Okay. Well, we want to go ahead and stop sharing the screen and just kind of have a nice, good old conversation and really explore this a little bit more. So I do also just love how everyone shared their story of how they came into it. So many of us kind of came accidentally or incidentally into this field. So this has been great. I'll ask the first question to Sarah. What key factors do you consider when deciding which nonprofits to support? We clearly have a lot of nonprofits in the room, and we want to get an idea of what key factors you consider.
So similar to Stephen, I would say first and foremost, organizations whose missions align with policy objectives of the business. We're working in a highly technical field at Amazon and Amazon Web Services. There's a lot of robotics and CS, computer science infrastructure. So one of my core areas of focus is computer science skill acquisition. So we're a significant partner with organizations that work on bringing STEM tools and resources and computer science acquisition out into community. So just as one example, that's a direct alignment to the business. We know we have a significant amount of demand, not only within our own workforce, but also within the workforce demand of our customers. Many people don't know what Amazon Web Services is, but I'd say if you streamed a movie on Netflix or you purchased a meal on Grubhub, you're on Amazon Web Services. So we're the infrastructure behind many of your favorite websites. And so I think we're really thinking about that alignment strategy. How do we look each year? And we're not, similarly to many of my corporate colleagues, we're not multi-year grant funders, which we know can be frustrating. Like many traditional family foundations or private foundations, we know that that's a need. We're not seeding that our community partners would love to have multi-year grants from us, but because many of us are operating either in a foundation structure with our corporate partner that we get a standing allocation annually for funding, or our funding is dictated by the market, which none of us are enjoying right now. I think, we're always in a position where we have to kind of look equally across our partners in an annual way to say, do these organizations continue to deliver on the results that they've committed to the community? Are they moving the needle on initiatives that are important to the policy objectives of the business? And often I'd say those can stay very standard. I'd say in my 10 years at United Airlines, and JeNyce, I think, could back me up on this, we always did commercial airline work. That didn't change. At Amazon, what we work on from a business perspective changes very quickly, and consistent focus areas change year over year. So as you may be following along, we now own a company that's working on telecommunications and Wi-Fi infrastructure. So now, as we look into this year ahead, we may be considering partners that are thinking about accessibility and digital divide, which has not been an area we focused on in the past. So I would say, we're really thinking on that annual basis of what's in front of us, what do we see in the next 3 to 5 years as an imperative to the business, and how do I then bring the resources that Amazon has to bear for the community. One other area I just mentioned briefly is thinking about what assets we have. So at United, it was about travel and airline tickets. Often at Amazon, my biggest opportunity to support community-based nonprofits is in our transportation and logistics infrastructure. So we do courtesy movements of product for organizations. 2 large ones in this area, I would say, are Nourishing Hope. We do the home delivery. So if you're an individual who has ambulatory concern or accessibility limitations and you receive food support from Nourishing Hope, you receive your delivery for free from Amazon, from one of our paid drivers. And that's something I can offer to the nonprofit to help reduce their cost infrastructure, but at the same time, make sure that someone's being paid a fair wage for that work. And the same thing when it comes to large scale moves. So we're picking up food product for someone like Northern Illinois Food Bank on a daily basis and helping distribute that to their network of partners. So thinking across our own assets to figure out what do we have already within our wheelhouse that we can deliver to support community organizations in a way that's beneficial to them, not just performative support. So I think that's an alignment we're constantly doing, and I think something that I enjoy is that there's always that kind of constant changing framework, but I think it can be frustrating for my partners who think, my thing was important to Amazon last year. Why is it not the biggest imperative this year? So we're kind of working to be as transparent as we can for that in a recurring way, and making sure that that stays clear to our partners so that we're not either of us misstepping on expectations.
Thank you so much. I got a comment in the chat. Grace Redzik, we love our Amazon partnership. So some acknowledgements in the chat. Thank you, Sarah. And if there's time, I'd love to hear that same question from others. But next, we're going to go to JeNyce. JeNyce, what are common red flags or mistakes that you see nonprofits when approaching corporate partners?
I will tell you, these are probably some pet peeves of mine, but when a nonprofit partner has not done the research before making an ask with an organization. So as a financial institution, our focus is really around affordable housing, workforce development, small business development, and we have a space that we invest in from a play perspective. But if you are a social services organization, we do not fund or support social service organizations, and you're requesting funding for a program or an event, do your research. I will tell you, in my role, I'm a one-woman show managing the state of Illinois, but also a region. And to get those requests where there's just no alignment, it's incredibly frustrating. So do your research. I would say another red flag for me is if you reach me, we have a conversation, and I say, this just does not align. I provide a gracious no. It's don't come back at me to try and argue why your funding request fits in our alignment with what the bank supports. If I'm graciously telling you no, it's no. It's no. So just another issue, a red flag for me. And I'd say something else to consider is also once we've had a conversation, perhaps it's a no, or if it is a no, don't go around circumvent me to go maybe to, the president and CEO of US Bank to find out, to ask, we need this program funded, in Chicago. That's very irritating to me. So if it's no, from my perspective, it's a no. And if you try and circumvent me, that's also irritating because it really erodes the partnership, the relationship that we have. So one other thing I wanted to touch on, I know that Sarah mentioned that Amazon does not do multi-year grants. I will tell you that for the work that my firm does in the affordable housing space, small business, workforce development, financial education, our focus is really in long-term growth and development. So we have a greater appetite to enter into multi-year commitments. A lot of the issues that we face and our community face in those areas just didn't happen overnight. So it requires more of a long-term investment to build that generational wealth gap, to try and end systemic racism. Again, that takes time. And for me, as a corporate donor, a philanthropist, I'm looking at those long-term partnerships. For me, for the firm, that makes sense. So I just want to share a little bit of the dynamic with, I know with Amazon, Sarah, you guys are, running 100,000 miles a minute. For the bank, again, we're dealing with systemic and generational issues that take time to overcome. And as much work as we've done to move 10 steps ahead, just given the current climate, it almost feels like we've moved 20 steps back, but it's a long-term commitment. You have to stay in it for the long term. So I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. I think that was very helpful. Thank you so much, JeNyce. And I love the passion and commitment. So thank you for that. Okay, I got one more question. This one is to Stephen. Okay, Stephen, what kind of impact data or storytelling resonates most with you and your company? Inquiry minds want to know.
So there are two parts. There are two parts to that question. There's the data part, and then there's the storytelling part. Certainly, they go together. But I'll take them separately. In terms of data, and I'm now speaking more on behalf of kind of grant makers and to potential nonprofit partners. There's so much data out there that it's really important that the grantee and the grantor early in the relationship communicate to figure out what is the most important thing to each party, because you want to make these mutually beneficial relationships. And so one thing that I talk to my peers and to other grant makers about this, let's not just ask folks just for a bunch of data just because we feel like, ooh, well, if I ask them for, a 10-page report, then it kind of covers me. Well, it's, we need to look more at what is most important. What are we trying to achieve? What story are we trying to tell? And then let's work together to figure out what's the data that we need to collect and what's the best way to do it. So then that gets into the storytelling part. So part one, it shouldn't be some type of, yes, there are certainly some basic things that need to be collected, but the grantee and the grantor should work together to figure out, all right, what are we trying to tell, and then what's the core information we need to tell that story, and let's work together to do that. That's part one. Part two is the storytelling. So once you get the data, how do you tell the story? Kind of out of fashion is just, all right, give me a big long report, every quarter or at some periodic nature. Now there are different ways to tell stories. So at Verizon, we've spotlighted grantees because we're a tech company. So we've spotlighted grantees on community web. We've done, actually, I've done podcasts and we've done interviews where we have highlighted grantees and highlighted their work. We've done web posts, we've done blogs. So there are different ways to not only collect the information, but to tell the story. And so I encourage, again, both grantees and grantors to enter into a collaborative relationship where they can figure out some creative ways to not only collect the data, but to tell that story.
Thank you. I love that. That was like really helpful in terms of helping us kind of come up with ways in this moment to really project our work. So thank you for that. I'm going to give the floor to Jessica.
Thank you. I'm going to go off script for just a minute. I'm getting a nudge in the chat. It seems like there is one area that we really want to be sure gets covered, and that is, you all have spoken a little bit about, what you're looking for in partnerships and proposals, and what are the red flags and the data and storytelling, which is so many great pieces. But the nudge I'm getting, and it is a good nudge, is, what does the process look like for applying with each of your companies? Timing, expectations for applying. If you each could just touch on that a bit. Stephen, maybe we'll just go back to you for a second. It kind of give us a sense of somebody who's looking to engage and apply with Verizon. What are the steps that they need to take?
Certainly. So we do not have a open RFP type process. And even back in the day, there was some functionality where you could go and put your information to a website and then try and find out, okay, how can I get an invitation? So we are invitation, and by the way, we don't have that functionality anymore. So we are invitation only. I tell people the way that one of the best ways to partner with us is, are you in community doing work in community? When I say doing work in community, there are so many organizations that are out, doing great stuff. And what are our focus areas? We are looking at digital, STEM education. We are looking at how do we empower small businesses to utilize technology. So those are, how are we empowering organizations to use technology for environmental sustainability? So those are the things that are part of our Citizen Verizon framework. And so if you are in community doing work, when I say community, I'm talking about the broader community. So are you partnering with other organizations to do the work, or are you kind of off to the side, kind of lone wolf, kind of doing your own thing? Because a lot of folks who I have met in community, I've met from Sarah. So Sarah and I, we go back. So we share notes. And so Sarah has told me about some wonderful organizations doing work, whether it comes to digital enablement of small businesses or STEM education. And so a lot of it is, if you are in community, because and again, broadly speaking, in community, then I can, that's where I am out looking for folks who have the alignment that we have. And so if you are collaborating with other organizations, it's a greater chance that I will see you, or one of my colleagues can tell me about you. So that's really how I come into contact with a lot of my grantees.
Thank you, Stephen. Sarah, anything to add to that? I know there's some similarities.
Yeah, I'd say there are similar alignments to Stephen. We're not in an open application framework at Amazon. Our decision making is on an annual basis. So I put together a plan, align it with each of the business units in the market that I'm working with. Similar to JeNyce, I have a concentration in Illinois and Chicago, but I cover 6 states, and I'm a team of 1. So I think that that's something as we talk to grantees, often there's this expectation that I've got some army of people with me because I work at a big business. And often we are a very small resource team for pretty large areas of geographic need. So we also say, like, I look for patience in my partners. I look for people who are going to be honest brokers with me and tell me when they have hard deadlines and tell me when things are unique opportunities that I should take a look at. But because I'm in an annual planning cycle, if you bring me the best idea that you've ever had, I may still not have the funding in this fiscal year to consider it. And it doesn't mean that it's not a very effective partnership opportunity or that Amazon wouldn't be a valued add to your needs. But sometimes timing doesn't line up. We don't do a kind of a traditional invitation at a particular time in the year. I'm usually in kind of fact-finding mode all throughout a calendar year, going to events, meeting with partners, meeting with relationships who've been brought up to me through community. And I kind of need a date to get to know you and then decide whether or not I'm going to put you forward for a grant. And so that doesn't always work effectively for event-related sponsorships. Amazon isn't a big golf and gala player. And also because I'm a team of one, I can't be at all of those things. And that's not always the best return on our investment just to do kind of fundraising related initiatives. I am more of a programmatic funder. We don't do capital funding at Amazon. From my side of the shop, we have a housing equity partnership program team in Seattle that does some housing specific work. But they're our only team across philanthropy that does any capital grant making. And so I would say, you know, if you want to get to know Amazon, you want to get to know me about the work that we do, show up and do good and effective work in the community, talk to folks that are on your board, on your leadership team about introductions and advocacy. And the likelihood is, we were joking earlier today, this is like the biggest small town in Chicago. So if you're doing good work and you're speaking to others about recommending you as a candidate for opportunity, it will get back to us. I'm not opposed to people reaching out, but because of my scope and my staffing, as in one person, I would say, you know, blind solicitations through LinkedIn aren't super thoughtful or helpful in us considering you as a partner. I'd say my biggest level of intelligence comes from community members, and often the organizations who are seen as most effective at the neighborhood-based level aren't the shiny, glossy brochure partners. They're people who are doing the work in and out, building relationships at the community level. And that's typically, to Stephen's point, how I source organizations that I want to align with. And then taking recommendations from other community partners who see someone who's effective in the neighborhood, or a civic leader who, you know, sees a standout opportunity. So it isn't that coming to us in kind of active grant making season isn't helpful. It's just to lead first with the relationship and not the ask. I'm sure everyone on this call does amazing things. I'm sure that you're the most effective partner in your area of mission. But we're also not in a position where we're not budget constrained. And I think the elephant in the room in this call is all of us are feeling the pressure from our community partners right now with all of the federal cuts that are happening and state cuts that are happening. But we aren't, as corporate partners, immune to those same constrictions around our funding. So we're also being, I think, a little bit more targeted as we work with new partners to understand how all of those different elements converge. Doesn't necessarily mean that the corporate or philanthropy sector was expecting this level of deficit happening at the state and federal level. So being patient with us, helping us understand your needs, but knowing we're also kind of in that same mindset right now, which is how do we do more with less?
Great points there. Thank you. JeNyce, I know you already touched a bit on, you know, kind of the funding priorities for US Bank. You mentioned play and work, and anything else you want to add about US Bank's process?
So I will tell you that from a community affairs perspective, we fund through our US Bank Foundation, and technically it's an open application process. So I do provide invitations for organizations to invite them to apply for funding, but organizations still do have the opportunity to submit a letter of interest. I will tell you very candidly, I have a forecast each year. And with my foundation funding, there's very little wiggle room. Again, as I mentioned before, our partnerships are very long-term. We fund organizations where they will have an impact in those areas where strategically are important for us. I do have a separate budget. I know Sarah mentioned that they don't do a lot of galas and things like that. We do. US Bank is at, pretty much every gala within our segment, from affordable housing, workforce development, and other community partners that are doing great work around workforce development, financial education. And for that budget, it's very tight, but I always give myself a little wiggle room. So walking around money, there may be something that comes up, an innovative program that maybe come October, I have a little bit of budget left, I can consider funding support, but I will be very transparent. Our budgets are incredibly tight and likely getting tighter just with the state of affairs and just how the business is. But I did want to mention, I like the comparison or that Sarah had about dating an organization first. Again, I want to date you. Tell me about you. Don't come at me with an ask right out the bat. Let's get to know each other. And that's probably the best approach to possibly getting on the radar for funding support or just partnership support. So again, technically open process and a little bit of budget on the side for sponsorships and other more innovative things that we do that may be considered self-dealing from a foundation perspective.
I add one quick note, Jessica, and I think JeNyce just made me think about this as we were joking about the dating reference. I'd say the other thing, because while JeNyce may be in an MOU or LOI structure committed to a multi-year grant, I have lots of partners that I work with year over year. And I'd say the distinction, to JeNyce's point, are if you've come to me and you've helped me develop something that we want to work on together and we did a great job, and then you ghost me and I don't hear from you until you need money the next time, the likelihood that I'm going to come back to the table quickly with that listening ear is probably a little slower. And that's, those relationships that continue to be evaluated and I prioritize in my budget year over year are organizations that are proactive in outgoing communication. I don't need to come to everything that you do, but it's wonderful to be involved and to know about it and be asked about how I can make relationship connections for you. So investing in the relationship, I think, is the biggest thing. I used to be at United, so was JeNyce. We tend to stay in these orbits, and I have partners that I worked with at United who I brought with me to Amazon because they're really great relationship managers and people who know how to deliver results for community, but also how to keep me informed to be able to advocate on their behalf, because they think about their partnership dynamics and their relationships as a key component of how they build their programming. And so I do think, in this business especially, we talk about knowledge work and AI and all the things that are changing really fast. And there's a lot of opportunities for efficiency. It's a business who does AI. I should say, don't be afraid of it. But I think in our world, this is so much more about relationships and about human connection and about us being able to see you as effective community partners and leaders. So putting that effort and time into the relationship is something I would say is always worth it, and may not pay off forever when I'm in this seat or JeNyce or Stephen are in these seats, but they may when they're in their next seat, because you never know what businesses we might one day represent, or I always say which one of you I might be working for, which is always part of this as well. So I would say that if I could say, key priority is invest in those relationships, and that's what will pay off for you.
And I don't want to pile on even more, but again, to Sarah's point, I'm not looking for a transactional relationship with a partner. I work at a financial institution, so I don't want you to approach me as, get the checkbook out, fill this out, give us money. It's about relationship building. And for the work that I do, again, I'm a one-woman show, but I really rely on my bankers across the state and across the region to connect with organizations that are meaningful within the affordable housing space, workforce development, small business development, but it's all about relationship building. And for me, I always want to have a full body partnership with that partner. So it's just not transactional. And again, even though I can't be everywhere at all times, the information sharing that is also offered is critical. I am on my email practically all day, every day, and I might not be able to fund something, but if you send me information about sort of the innovation, the work that you're doing, it may be a no today, but in a couple months, maybe next year, it could be a yes. So that information sharing, relationship building, and a full body partnership, that's what I'm looking for.
Love that. Thank you. I know we could probably spend another hour on this part of it alone, but we do want to honor some of the questions that are in the chat. And if there's time, we can circle back on some of these elements. So I'll toss it to Ndidi to lift up our first question from the chat.
Yes, this is really informative, and I like the fact that we are in a very interesting moment, to say the least. But there's still, hope. Let's keep our ducks in alignment so that if and when things change, we're ready, so we don't have to get ready. Okay, so let's open the floor. We have some questions in the chat. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this. Deja Baldwin is asking, is it okay to ask for feedback or suggestions on restructuring the proposal? Anyone want to take that one?
I'll speak for me. I would say absolutely, but don't necessarily expect a different result in this first run. So getting that feedback so that you can make your case stronger, more effective as you go out to other funders. But to JeNyce's point, if I've already politely declined, and I hope I politely declined, I'm happy if I have the time and availability to kind of tell you what to sharpen things up or to improve upon your approach. But it may simply not be the application. It could certainly just be timing or budget constriction or other things. So don't always assume that you didn't do an effective and thoughtful job in the appeal. Sometimes it's just a matter of timing and priority. But I'd say absolutely, as long as you kind of take that feedback with grace and know that you learn to fight another day, versus it feeling like a give and take, because the likelihood is, I'm telling you, I can't pursue the opportunity right now, not as a negotiation tactic, but as kind of just a fact of where I am in my planning year.
And actually, I'm going to dovetail off that really quickly. Do you find sometimes that maybe it's not a yes today, but if they reapplied at a different period or in a different round, then it might be a fit?
Yeah, and I'd actually say even more so, the fact that I now know about it and I have that on my radar, if my business priorities change or I come into additional funding as a result, I'm a part of a team of 12 people who do this job globally at Amazon. So we may have some other market who has an opportunity fall through and new budget becomes available in the same year. If it's a great idea, but it's a matter of timing, the more likely scenarios that I would come back to you and say, hey, things have changed. Do you still want to work on this together? As opposed to, you feeling like you need to come back to me with the same pitch. And I do think, to JeNyce's point, that it's fine to ask for that clarity. Is there a business misalignment or is this just not the right time? Mm-hmm. And I think most of us will be transparent and be able to tell you, yes, come back to me, or this is really never going to be a fit based on our business imperatives.
Thank you so much. I want to try to thank you. That was very helpful, that additional note. I'm going to try to get a couple more and then I'll, trying to get all these ones in the chat as much as we can. Tanika Johnson asks, what are the best ways for a nonprofit to approach a corporation for event sponsorship when there's a clear alignment between the event's purpose and the company's mission? I feel like we kind of touched on that one. But if anyone else wants to kind of offer anything additional.
Yeah, we did touch on that, but I want to double click on something that, especially that Sarah said, and JeNyce in effect said it the same way. These types of programs are helpful because it's good to know that corporate philanthropy is a little bit different than maybe a family office or a private foundation or a community foundation. Within corporations, we have to put together budgets. And many times those budgets, once we get into the new year, those budgets might be set. And so literally there might not be budget room, even if that's like, oh wow, that's yes, there's alignment and it looks great. We literally might not have the budget room to do it. So just as a kind of as a helpful hint, if you are looking for something like, look, I need some funding right now for an event that's coming up really soon, corporate philanthropy might not be the most expedient route to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't try, because I know if you're in fundraising, you shake all the bushes, and I totally get that. But just to know, just to give folks a sense, there are grantees that I have worked with and had coffee with and have talked with for 2 years before we were able to fund them for a variety of reasons. So yes, there are, if you are at an event where there are a bunch of STEM funders, because it's a robotics event, and you have a robotics club. Well, yes, you can probably either Sarah, I, or one of our colleagues will probably be there. Many of us might be there. So it is certainly appropriate to introduce yourself. But if you're introducing yourself, hi, I got an event next month. Can you fund it? The likelihood of that happening is just not strong. But if you say, hey, you know what? We're good for this year. But I'm thinking about how do we tweak this event for next year? Would you be open to a conversation? Now that might be a better way to approach things. So just a kind of just a thought to put out there.
No, actually, I think that's very helpful. And I think that kind of might have answered some of the other questions in the chat when it says how to approach if you don't have a direct relationship. So it sounds like, when you're in the community, out at events and things like that, just kind of building and introducing yourself, letting people know about that. And then one final question to your point. So when is a good time? Because this is what I find too with nonprofits sometimes. When is the right time to start requesting corporate sponsorship for a particular effort? It definitely doesn't sound like a week before the event. So how much time should someone give themselves, or how in advance should they be planning to try to apply for funds?
I'll jump in. If it's from my vantage point, if it's a sponsorship for an event that I've never covered through my firm, I need at least 2 to 3 months to review the ask and determine if it aligns. For something that's a bit larger, potential foundation grant support, I would almost say that maybe starting the relationship building a year before you hope to get funding. And I know that's incredibly long, but for me, from where I sit, I mentioned before, I have set budgets that are finalized probably in November, December. So for me, by September, my budget's essentially exhausted. So to approach me and say, we have this event coming up in November, by that time, the money's probably already spent. So just to be mindful of making sure that there's enough time for review, also taking in consideration when budgets are looked at. And even, for a event that's say happening in 2026, I start looking at my budgets probably Q3, Q4. And that's probably a good time to maybe reach out from my vantage point. But again, once budgets are finalized, they're final. I may have a little bit of wiggle room, but probably not. So again, for events, 2 to 3 months, and for foundation funding, probably at least 6 months to a year. And the timing is really key. Again, if you're looking at for consideration at the end of the year, it's not going to happen. I'll just be honest.
That is so helpful, because I personally, we find that often, just making sure that we do it way in advance. I'm going to cede the floor to Jessica for the final questions. And thank you, JeNyce.
All right. I know time flies when you're talking funding. See what I did there? Okay. How important is it to have opportunities for employee engagement? I know, it's not always about, direct dollar relationships, but there could be other engagement opportunities. So when you all are considering kind of the relationship building and partnering, could you speak a little bit about the employee engagement opportunities?
Sure, I can start. At Verizon, we have a pretty robust employee engagement and volunteer efforts. So, well, 5 years ago, we came out with a goal that says we're going to provide 2.5 million volunteer hours by 2025. So 2.5 by 2025. And so we are on pace to meet that because we're in 2025 now. So I guess we have until through the end of the year. But like I said, we're certainly on target for that. And that is certainly a really good opportunity to do. So you have both kind of your traditional general volunteerism, but you also have skill-based volunteerism. So, the difference being, if you ask me to come and paint a fence for Habitat for Humanity or teach a class for junior achievement, yeah, that's great. That's time that I spend and generally pretty rewarding. I've done junior achievement for a number of years. However, if you ask me if I'm a computer programmer or I do in my day job website development, and you say, you know what, our organization, we could really use a website. That might be, seek those opportunities to say, hey, do you all do pro bono website development? Because what I have found, and actually, I remember one case where a lady asked me for a grant, and I said, don't have any funding. Funding's already allocated for the rest of the year, but we just kept talking, and I found out what she really needed was someone to come and teach a class in her community center on I can't remember if it's on 3D printing or something. I was like, oh, well, if that's what you really need, I know somebody. I know an engineer who does that. And so I was able to provide a recommendation. And so I always said when you're talking to corporations, yes, I know, having sat in a nonprofit seat, I know that you must operations depend on money. But also be thinking about what are some broad, it goes back to my original definition of CSR, what's the broader base of resources that can be used? Because sometimes providing a person who can do something that will prevent you from having to spend money to do that thing, that's valuable as well.
Great insight. JeNyce, Sarah, any last words on that piece? I know with all of you, we've done lots of engagement things, and there's so many out of the box ways to think about partnerships, which is really cool.
I was going to say employee engagement is incredibly important with my firm. As a financial institution, we aren't the biggest boys on the block. So how we differentiate ourselves just locally it's through the investments, but how we show up in the community with our bankers. We have our physical branches, but are our bankers getting out in the community? Are they teaching financial education? Are they helping low to moderate income individuals with home ownership? Are they a part of resume review for workforce development program? Here with my firm, we have a bunch of business resource groups that the prime objective for these groups is to get out, is to connect with one another, but to go out and make a difference in the community. And again, it helps to differentiate how we show up. Again, they're financial institutions that do the same thing that we do, offer the same products, but it's how we show up that differentiates us.
Thank you, JeNyce. All right, I think we'll have to cut it there. And Ndidi, I'm going to toss it back to you for our final remarks.
Okay, final remarks. Well, this has been an amazing panel. We're so grateful for all of the work and that you all do, as well as you taking the time out today. I want to go ahead and let everyone know about the upcoming session for May's convening. Okay, pardon my Canva reveal, but so we've done the Q&A. next month, May 6th, it will be What We Wish Nonprofits Knew, a candid conversation with funders. So we will have foundation partners from the Chicagoland area, and really just kind of discussing in this moment. The session really is designed to give nonprofit leaders real insight as to how funders are adapting to today's political and social climate, and including shifts and priorities, how impact is being redefined, and what makes organizations shine or stand out in 2025. It's going to be a different, there are going to be a lot of similar threads, but because these are foundations, their approach and accessibility is also different. So it's going to be really interesting to have this conversation in this moment. And we have representatives from Chicago Community Trust, WF Foundation, and the Coleman Foundation. And I'll be honored to be your moderator. And the floor to Jessica. Just want to thank you.
Yeah, so just thank you everyone once again for joining us today. I know there's so much to cover on this topic, and as you can see, there'll be some continuation, some continued alignment in our next session, so we hope you can join the Phi Club in May as well. We want to give a special thank you to our panelists, JeNyce, Stephen, Sarah. You all are doing incredible work. I know some of it doesn't always get noticed or thanked, and so publicly just want to say thank you for being great friends, great partners, great supporters of the work that is so desperately needed in all of our communities. We wish you all a great rest of the day, and here's to continue to fight the good fight. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.